Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Today it is a video that I have been waiting to make, and I know a lot of y'all are waiting to watch. And this is going to be what are we growing in the garden to feed our rabbits. Now my goal is to go 2 months this summer where I feed our rabbits straight from the garden, no pellets at all. And we are raising meat rabbits. So we have a lot of rabbits here on our homestead. Our current total is, hold on. I want to say 20 rabbits maybe. We have 2 grow out bucks, 1 breeder buck, 5 does in our colony, and 12 babies in our colony right now. Whoo, guys. It's a lot of rabbits, but we got this. I'm going to go over with you everything I plan to grow in my garden that will also feed my rabbits. Now, this isn't talking about growing a special garden for rabbits. These are things I'm already growing for my family that my rabbits can eat also, because don't do double the work when you don't have to. So we're going to sit down. We're going to go over all of that. Go ahead and grab you a pen and paper so you can make notes. Of course, you can always come back and rewatch this video. And I will be putting all of this over on my blog so you can get it in reading format as well. So make sure you look in the description box for the link that heads you over to that blog post so you can see all of this written down in case you want to just focus on the video now and have that as a reference guide. I've already done that work for you and you can just go over there and check it out. You got a package?
Yeah.
Sorry, we got a duckling.
I got this package.
You want to come say hey to our friends?
Yeah.
Say hey, friend.
Hi, friends.
Oh, they got a package, evidently. So over on the blog post, I will put an entire list of things I found that rabbits can eat from the garden, not necessarily just what we're growing. This specific video is going to be about what we are growing personally in our garden that will feed our rabbits as well. Okay friends, so before we get started going through this list, there's a few things we need to go over. Oxalic acids. If you ever read anything about feeding your rabbits naturally, you're going to read oxalic acid. So the oxalates are actually in the food and they produce oxalic acid. Oxalic acid is toxic and you don't want a buildup of it in your animal system. But they do need some of the foods that actually contain oxalic acid. So the important part is to feed it in moderation. But even more than that is to know what foods have it and what foods don't. So as I go through this list, I will let you know if it is a food that contains oxalic acid. And if it is, then you just make note of it. And there will be a ratio that I give you at the end. And on my blog post, it'll tell you how to dilute that oxalic acid with foods that don't contain it. But oxalic acid poisoning, or when an animal has a buildup of oxalic acid in their system, shows up in a few ways, and some of them are very noticeable. So if you are feeding too much of it, if you're watching your rabbits and paying very close attention to their behaviors, knowing what's normal, what isn't normal for them, then you'll know, hey, I need to back off that oxalic acid food. I'm feeding them too much. So there are 3 ways you will see oxalic acid build up in your rabbits. The first is going to be a urinary tract issue. You may actually not notice this because I don't notice a whole lot of times when my rabbits pee. They're in rabbit tractors, they're in a rabbit colony. That's just not something I notice. I know some people who have their rabbits in cages will know even the color of their rabbit's urine. Rabbit's urine can be all the way from yellow to deep dark orange, and some people even said red. You know, so it's kind of difficult to judge what's normal, but that is an issue that could happen with oxalic acid, is urinary tract issues. So if you notice a weird change in your rabbit's urine, if you have them in cages or something that can monitor that, know that that may be an issue you see. The next 2 ways that it will show up in your rabbit are more noticeable. So skin itchiness and mouth itchiness are going to be 2 other ways it's going to show up. It's going to make them really, really itchy. So if you notice that your rabbit is like scratching a lot, pulling out their fur, rubbing their mouth a lot, you know, moving it side to side, like something like that, hey, that should be a clue that you need to back off of those oxalic acid foods. So watch your rabbits, know when they're itchy and when they're not. Know it's normal for them. If they're scratching a whole lot and pulling out fur, that may not be normal unless they're about to have babies, and yeah, they should pull out their fur. But if they're not, just know that that's something you should be aware of. Okay, another thing is when you feed your rabbits a natural diet, and even when you feed them pelleted food, rabbits should have a continuous supply of hay for them to eat. The difference is when they're on a pelleted food, they tell you not to feed alfalfa hay because pellets are mainly comprised of alfalfa hay. I mean, it has other things in there, but a lot of it is alfalfa hay. And so if you feed them alfalfa hay plus pellets, you're giving them too much alfalfa hay, then they have too much protein and calcium in their bodies. But if you're not feeding them pellets, give them the alfalfa hay. Other hay options you can give them are Timothy hay or oat hay. Both of those are recommended even when you're feeding pellets or just, grass hay, whatever you have. But you need to give them a high quality hay when you're not feeding the pelleted. Okay, so the foods that we are feeding our rabbits from our gardens. A lot of the foods they can eat are parts of a plant that you are not gonna eat. So they're kind of like cleaning up your leftovers. Love rabbits. I've broken them down into several categories based off of what we're feeding. We've got fruits, herbs, root crops, flowers, and lettuces. Those are the 5 categories I have going on. Now, fruits are going to include the actual fruit and the other parts of the fruit plant as well. And fruit, for this definition, is anything that has its seeds on the inside. The first one is obviously a fruit plant, raspberries. So if you have a raspberry bush, don't feed them the fruit from the raspberry bush, feed them the leaves from that raspberry bush. You eat the fruit, give them the leaves. Fruits for rabbits are very, very high in sugars and will upset their belly a whole lot. Next, and one people don't often think of as being a fruit, are bell peppers. You can give them slices of bell peppers as a treat, but really limit that. You don't want to give them a whole lot of fruit. It's like giving them a giant chocolate bar. Instead, you eat the bell pepper, give them the leaves from the bell pepper plant. There you go. It doesn't go to waste. Cucumbers, zucchinis, and squashes. You want to give them the leaves from those plants. They can have a little bit of the fruit part of that plant, but again, like one slice, maybe once a week, like limit the fruit part. They can have it as a treat, but give them the leaves. So again, you eat the fruit, you give them the leaves. And then okra leaves. So grow your okra plant, harvest your okra, give them the leaves. Anytime you're pruning any of these plants, give them the leaves. So the next list we're going to go over are herbs, and a lot of herbs are medicinal for both humans and for animals. So one herb specifically that we are growing in our garden that we will also be using as a medicinal option if we need it in both our rabbits and our chickens is oregano. Oregano acts as an antibiotic. Now for rabbits, you can't give them garlic for an antibiotic like you can chickens. Like garlic also has antibiotic properties, and that's what we mix in with our chicken water when we get new chicks in to kind of fight off a brooder pneumonia before it starts. But rabbits can't have garlic, but they can have oregano. So if you have a rabbit that maybe looks like it has a little bit of the, runny nose or something, maybe isn't looking so great, try some oregano. You never know. So herbs on this list are going to be cilantro, rosemary, parsley, which has oxalic acid, so note parsley, oxalic acid, sage, oregano, dill, basil, thyme, and spearmint. You could actually feed any of the mints, but spearmint is the one we're growing. So with herbs, when you're planting your vegetable garden, plant herbs everywhere. If you have an empty space, like at the end of a raised bed or something, put an herb there. If you have space in between plants, put a low-lying herb there. Grow your tomatoes up, put a basil in between them. That's what I do. Because a lot of herbs will also keep pests away from your garden, or that herb will attract that pest to it and away from your plant. So look into the different herbs and what they companion plant well with in your vegetable garden. And herbs a lot of times produce a ton of seeds for you to save for the next year. Basil is one herb that you can, harvest as much as you want, then let it go to seed and harvest thousands of seeds from one plant. Like, it's crazy. And have tons to plant for the next year. So basil is one of my favorites. I will always grow basil in my garden. I always grow it all around my tomatoes because it's supposed to help the tomatoes have a richer flavor. And it's really good to feed your rabbits. So the next group we're going to go over is root crops. And one of these in here may actually surprise you, and that is carrots. you actually are not supposed to feed your rabbits carrots. What? I know all of the cartoon rabbits think Bugs Bunny, think the Easter Bunny. Every one of them you see has a carrot in its mouth. But that is like a high concentrated chocolate bar for your rabbit. And considering they are like 1/10 of our size, you're giving them like a giant chocolate bar when you feed them a carrot. Carrots are treats. Give them a little piece. What I like to do is when I'm using carrots in my food and I'm peeling my carrots or cutting off the ends, I will give those as a special treat to our rabbits. I gave some the other night to our rabbits after they had their babies, but it's like peel that carrot and cut off those ends and give that to several rabbits. Like I give it in our doe colony that has 5 does in it, and let them eat that. It's a treat. It's not an everyday item. However, the carrot tops are really good for your rabbits to eat. So you eat the carrot, give them the carrot tops, and then when you peel or trim your carrots, give them as a treat occasionally. Now again, potatoes, don't give them to your rabbits. Anything sugary, starchy, they don't need. Messes up their guts. But sweet potato leaves are really, really good for your rabbits. So give them the sweet potato leaves, you eat the sweet potato. Next on our groups is flowers. The flowers in this list are, again, treats. The flower petals themselves, like an actual flower head. Try to think like once a week treat. Sunflower seeds are on this. A lot of rabbit foods, if you're feeding an all natural food, not a pelleted form, will have whole sunflower seeds in them. And they're really good to feed to nursing mamas. But be careful with sunflower seeds because they will pack the weight on your rabbits, and fat rabbits don't breed. So you want to keep your rabbits in a good body health. So spread your sunflower seeds out. They're great for your rabbits. Just don't give them a ton all at once. The 3 other flowers we are growing besides sunflowers that our rabbits can't eat are Calendula, Marigold, and Nasturtiums. Again, each of these are like candy to them. So once a week, give them a flower. And last on our list, and this is usually the one people think of when they're thinking about growing produce for their rabbits, and that is your lettuces. So the lettuces we are already growing for our family that our rabbits can eat are going to be things like buttercrunch, romaine, kale, which if you read a lot of things, it will tell you that kale is high in oxalic acid, but they did a study on it and it's actually not high in oxalic acid. So go ahead and feed your rabbits kale. It's okay. The 2 lettuces that we are growing that are high in oxalic acid are spinach and mustard green. So we will give them, they're just in a more diluted form. Give more of the romaine, buttercrunch, kale, less of the spinach and mustard greens. So again, everything that we are growing plus everything I have found that you can grow in your garden to feed your rabbits will be over on our blog post. Now, how much of this are we feeding our rabbits? That's going to depend on your rabbit and your rabbit's size and how hungry they are and things like that. But 1 to 3 cups a day per rabbit is what you should be feeding them. We feed our rabbits twice a day. So when we start this program, I will feed 1 cup per rabbit in the morning and 1 cup per rabbit in the evening and see how they go along with their hay. If they seem super hungry, I will go up to 1.5 cups in the morning, 1.5 cups in the evening, and that's where we will max out. They have hay. Our rabbits always act like they're starving considering they don't have food that goes all day except for their hay, and that's just how they are. they're spoiled a little bit. But that's what we're going to do. Start off with 1 cup per rabbit and go up to 1.5 if we need it. If we notice they're leaving food behind in their bowls repeatedly, then I will back it back down a little bit and do 1/2 cup in the morning per rabbit, 1/2 cup in the evening per rabbit. So it's, again, watching your rabbits, knowing how they eat, what's normal for them and what's not, will tell you if you're feeding enough or if you're not feeding enough. Any foods that are high in oxalic acid, you need to give them in a 2-to-1 ratio. So 2 foods that are not high in oxalic acid and 1 food that is needs to be diluted together. So that is going to be your ratio for that. And then, again, watch your rabbits. If you notice extreme itchiness, back it off a little bit. Maybe, you maybe got a little heavy-handed or your rabbit may be more sensitive to it. Just back it down just a little bit and see how they do there. It's a lot is watching your rabbits. Now, this 2-to-1 ratio does not include those fruits and flowers because remember, those are treats. Those are not included in our food options. The main thing with feeding your rabbits is you want to give them a variety of foods. So don't feed them kale morning, noon, and night, for 3 weeks straight. They need vitamins and minerals that are found in a lot of different foods. So as you go through your garden and you're picking stuff out for your family, think, hey, can my rabbit eat this? And then make their foods from that or something like that. Or if you notice, oh, my zucchini is getting a little overgrown there, go prune a few leaves off and include that in that day's ration for your rabbit's food. Just rotate things. Try to feed a different thing to them every day. Or at least if you're feeding kale, spinach, and cucumber leaves every day for a week, maybe switch it up and do something like butter crunch, mustard, and carrot tops. Something like that. And you can do more than 3 types of food to make up this, different mixture. Just do not exceed 1 oxalic food to every 2 non-oxalic foods in equal proportions. So if you want to do 6 different foods in that, or 5 different foods, or whatever, if you're doing 6, you can do 2 oxalic foods and 4 non-oxalic foods. If you're doing 5, do 1 oxalic food and 4 non-oxalic foods. So it doesn't really matter how many different types you give them. I think variety is better, but just know that for every 1 oxalic, you need to do 2 non-oxalic foods in equal proportions. And how many times have I said oxalic in this video? I'm not counting them. So now that we covered what we are feeding from our garden, let's cover things we may be growing in our garden that we're not going to feed our rabbits. So anything that's high in sugars, high in starches, do not feed them. It will throw off their GI tract. So again, those root vegetables that grow under the ground, feed the greens that grow above, skip the roots that grow down below. Other things that you may have heard other people feeding your rabbits, or may even be in your commercial rabbit feed that you grow in your garden that I don't suggest you feed your rabbits, are beans, cauliflower, corn, iceberg lettuce, tomato plant leaves, and peas. So the reason that you're not going to feed these items to your rabbits are because they're high in calories but low in nutrition. So your rabbit may fill up on those items, get too much calories into their system so they're not hungry anymore, but they didn't get the nutrition they needed because you're giving them food that's low in nutrition. So keep that in mind. Now we're doing this for 2 months in the summer, trying to feed our rabbits solely from our garden. We may continue to feed them throughout the year from our garden if we can get things to grow year round in order to supplement on our pelleted usage, and hopefully one day our goal is to be able to figure out how to grow enough to not feed our rabbits pellets at all and to always feed them a natural diet. Basically just because it will be cheaper if I can grow it myself than if I buy a pelleted version. Things that you may have around your homestead that you can dry and put up and use for winter usage are comfrey, plantain, borage, dandelion greens, those flowers we covered, and your leafy greens. So if you're wanting to get into this and feed throughout the winter but can't grow throughout the winter, think of drying some of these and give your rabbits a dry form of them and see how that goes for y'all. With feed costs rising and it being time to plant the garden, we're all looking at ways that we can maybe cut costs, ways that we can feed our rabbits, keep homestead rabbits, be a little more self-sufficient, less dependent on anything that can have inflations on it. Different feeds and stuff, hays and stuff are really having that right now. So this is what we're going to do this summer. This is what we're going to try out. Of course, I will document it as well. I just wanted to give y'all a heads up on things that I plan to grow. So if you want to try this out with your rabbits as well, you can grow along with me, feed them with me, and we'll go through this process together. Alright friends, as always, if you have any questions, please comment them down below. Let me know. My email address is always down below, so you send me an email. Reach out to me on Instagram at livingthehightlife. Send me a message over there or something. Just let me know what questions you have, and I'll see if my resources have any answers, or if I can find the answer for you, or what I have in my experience. I will see y'all next time. Bye, friends.